So Abraham was a righteous man, and this is what God found favorable about Abraham. Paul talks a little bit about this in Romans, but essentially God favors Abraham because of his faith. His faith, apart from the works, saved him. But as James points out, if one does not produce works, one's faith is dead. In other words, it does not exist. So works and faith go hand in hand. God says, I want to enter into a relationship with you in the form of a C word that we call the covenant. Now, I want you to understand the difference between covenant and contract, because in today's society, we are a contract-based society, right? Even to use your iTunes, you're agreeing to terms and conditions to use the software. It's all that little fine print.
You agreed we could take all the blood we needed.
What are you talking about?
When you downloaded the last iTunes update, a window on your screen popped up and asked you if you agreed to our terms and conditions. You clicked agree.
To buy a house, to buy a car, a lot of times to get a job, you are under a contract. That's not what we're talking about in scriptures. In biblical times, it was more of a covenant society, a relationship society. Whereas contracts have terms and conditions, covenants are unconditional. Now, one of the terms of a contract is perhaps a time limit. As a teacher, I have a 1-year contract that is renewed every year. At the end of the 1 year, the school can easily say to me, we're done, we no longer need your services, and I just kind of have to pick up my stuff and walk away because my contract said it was only going to last 1 year. Covenants are eternal. You can see why the Catholic Church has such a hard time when it comes to divorce, because in the Catholic tradition we view marriages as covenantal based, and covenants by description, by definition, are eternal. So if you got married in a civil union, if you got married by a judge, the state recognized your marital bond as a contract, as an agreement with terms and conditions. And the primary term is, thou shalt not cheat on your spouse. If you're found in violation of that contract, that's grounds for divorce court. It's not so easy in the Catholic tradition. Whereas a divorce is a state declaration that the contract is now null and void, the Catholics have something we call an annulment. An annulment is essentially an investigation to see whether or not the covenant was ever there to begin with. Was it built upon a solid foundation? I don't really want to get into today the theology on matrimony in the Catholic tradition, but I just wanted to shed some perspective that since in the Catholic tradition we view matrimony as covenant, this is why we're a little squirmish when it comes to separation, because by definition you can't break a covenant. Contracts are kind of stale. It's a this for that mentality. I'll give you this, quid pro quo. Again, as a teacher, I will come in and offer my services, my expertise, and my school put a value on what that's worth. And they'll pay me in that value if I agree to the terms of the contract. Now, if my school year goes on and I have a class that's a lot harder than what I anticipated when I originally signed that contract, I cannot go to my administrator and be like, hey, I know what my contract says, but my classes are a lot harder than I thought they would have been, so can you give me more money? Odds are they'll laugh in my face because the contract is black and white.
You've agreed to all of this!
If I choose to stop educating halfway through the year, and my year-long contract says I have to do this through June, and I were to stop because I want to go open up a pizza joint tomorrow, my school can find me liable for breach of contract.
I want you to release me from my contract.
And it even spells that out in the contract about what the type of liability damages could look like. So it's agreement-based and very stale, quid pro quo, black and white. In covenants, it's relationship-based, and if you know anything about relationships, you gotta be flexible. So there's some wiggle room in covenants. You're always making adjustments. You're always thinking about what is best for the relationship. Think of a covenant as a solemn promise or like a vow. Now, God forms a very famous covenant with Abraham. We just nickname it the Abrahamic Covenant. It is talked about in Genesis 15 and then again talked about in Genesis 17. I like the Genesis 17 passage because it really spells out what this covenant is to look like, including the sign of the covenant. So God makes a covenant with Abraham, and it is without terms and conditions. So it's not even a matter of, Abraham, do you agree to these promises. It's simply, Abraham, I'm going to offer this to you. So what does God promise Abraham? To a barren man at this point in history, multiple descendants. He will be the father of many nations. Dad. The father of multitude. And it talks about a name change there.
The name game.
Now, the name change has more to do with Abraham's meaning, or his essence has changed. Abram, roughly translated father in the singular sense, father of one. Abraham literally means father of multitude or father of many. So Abraham gets a new name because his essence, his identity, who he is now changes with this covenant. He will be the father of many. These many will be royal. Yeah. They will be kings. Kings will emerge from these descendants. And if you know your Hebrew history, King Saul, King David, King Solomon, even Jesus, royal.
You can call me Queen Bee.
God also promises Abraham the land in which he is now alien. Scripture is going to refer to that land as Canaan, the land flowing with milk and honey. Today we refer to that region of the world as Palestine and Israel. That promise is going to lead to some problems that we still face today. God promises Abraham's descendants that they will have this land. You'll come to see that Abraham has two sons. Ishmael being Abraham's firstborn, that the Islam tradition traces as their great ancestor, and of course Isaac being the secondborn that Judaism traces back to. And so essentially you have two world religions today, Islam and Judaism, both claiming stake to a land that was promised in Genesis 17. The Abraham Covenant, 1800 BC, still has massive significance on history today. So do you see what God is promising Abraham's descendants? That essentially, I am going to be your God and they will be my people. And this is where we get that expression that the Jews are the chosen people of God. Now I want to explain what I mean by that. Chosen ones do not mean the better than ones. It doesn't mean that God prefers these people over other people, because that's against the nature of God. God looks at all creation, says all creation is good, and Jesus saves all people. So when we say that the Jews are God's chosen people, is that essentially these are the people who God is going to make himself known to and through. It is through the Jews God reveals himself to the world. And he does that most appropriately with Jesus. Jesus was born into a Jewish family within the context of Jewish religion, and he makes himself known to this world. So I don't want you thinking chosen people means God likes them more than he likes everyone else. Think of the chosen people more or less as the ambassadors of God, those representing the revelation of God. And again, the nature of covenant says this: covenants are eternal. So to this day, the Jews still are God's chosen people. They are the people that God makes himself known to and through. Now, is there a new covenant through Jesus' blood? Yes. But it doesn't mean the initial covenant is gone.